Good evening, I'm Tom Mackin, Mayor Perrysburg, and I will call the council meeting of January 5th, 2021 to order with the roll call.
Okay, Ms. Warren.
Here.
Mr. Coolman.
Here.
Ms. Materney. Here. Mr. McCarthy. Here. Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Here. Just a general reminder to council members, because we do have partitions, to make sure you speak into the mic, and that will also help people who are attending by telephone. If you're able, please join me in standing saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And a general reminder, because I just hit my head when I stood up, to make sure you give yourself plenty of room when you stand up. All right. Minutes for the council meeting of December 15, 2020.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have the minutes. I believe everyone has received a copy of those. Hearing that there's not any corrections needed, I would like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of City Council meeting held on December 15th, 2020 as written, and to dispense with the reading.
Second.
Roll call.
Okay, Ms. Warren.
Yes.
Mr. Coolman.
Yes.
Ms. Materney.
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy. Yes. Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen. Yes.
Thank you. Special reports. We have no special reports. Letters, communication, and citizen concerns. Any resident has a question or comment, this is your opportunity. Hearing none. Administrative reports. Just a couple items very quickly. As everybody knows, John Ackle retired, and so did Jeff Studer. We want to wish them both long and happy retirements. There's lots going to be going on this year, but this time we'll wait to move some of that forward. But I would, as mayor, like to recommend Jessica Kemp and Christopher Patrick as reappointments to the Citizens Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee for a second term. So the council can address that. President's report, if you want to do it now, we can do it now. Whatever you prefer.
Let's wait till the.
All right, that's very good. Administrative report.
Good evening, everyone. I've been asked to give a little bit of an update regarding some questions that have come about from some of the council members regarding the city's employee COVID policy. So you may recall back in April of this year, we passed a policy, internally administrative policy, declaring who was a critical, non-critical staff member and what that meant if you were critical or non-critical. Also in April, we amended that by adding the CARES Act language for extended family medical leave or expanded family medical leave and emergency paid sick leave, according to the federal guidelines. We actually had nobody who requested any expanded family medical leave, nor did we have anyone utilize the emergency paid sick leave. We did have one employee who requested to apply for that, but he was not eligible based on the fact that he was a critical employee and they were exempted from the policy. That policy expired this past December 30th, along with the federal policy. What we have done since then, and since we had implemented that policy back in April, is we internally had provided our own paid administrative leave policy for COVID-related issues for an employee. If an employee either had to isolate or quarantine for themselves or because of immediate household family member, we accorded that person up to 80 hours of paid admin leave. And we've extended that with the sunsetting of the federal policy, since there was not any users of those policies, we simply extended our own internal city policy for up to 80 hours of paid admin leave through March 31st of this year. So we do have cases of COVID, employees that have to isolate or quarantine because of themselves or because of household family members. We maintain social distancing at all times, as much as possible, because obviously some of our staff work in close quarters with each other if they're working on certain projects or tasks. If that's the case, they have to wear masks. If you're in your offices, in your own space, you don't have to wear your mask, but if someone comes into your space, they have to wear their mask. We are still not allowing carte blanche to outside citizens into our buildings. It's by appointment only. So we're trying to do our part to do that. We have prioritized our own internal work to make sure that those things that are mission critical get done with the hands that we have available at that time. And then the rest of the work falls to the intermediate and lower levels of prioritization to make sure we can get those main tasks done. So far, we've not really had to subcontract out any work at any level to an outside agency because of our inability to do it with in-house staff because they were not available. The only times we have done that was because the project was too large for us to manage internally. So that is something, no matter what our staffing levels would have been, we would have farmed that out due to the nature of those projects. But I know that Councilman Smith may have some additional questions.
I do, thank you, Bridget. And one request real quick as well I've received from someone listening in on the phone is if we can please state our name before we speak, so that way they know who is speaking. Right now it's hard, I guess, to differentiate the voices. So this is Council President Smith. So one of the questions I have here, with this virus and everything that's going on with it, I know some individual personally who has spent several weeks in the hospital from COVID. There are some situations I'm sure that may come up where someone may exhaust their sick leave or that additional time. I'm hoping that the city isn't going to terminate someone for exhausting all the leave available to them due to the COVID or spending time in the hospital.
That has not been up for consideration at this point in time. We've actually only had one employee who actually just recently requested an unpaid leave of absence due to COVID. They had exhausted their 80 hours of paid admin leave, but that person is on the mend and is scheduled to be back at work this coming Friday.
And I know, going through some of the questions, because I know I sent you quite a few questions here over the last couple of days. I know the city seems to be doing a great job with managing internally with the virus and making sure that for those who are out that they we're not completely understaffed. But I know with the vaccine that's being distributed right now, I saw the photos, and I know that from prior emails that the EMTs who have wanted to be vaccinated have been vaccinated, and can you give us an idea of how many of those have been, and what's the next steps moving forward for our other frontline employees, our police department, sanitation, public utilities, all of those as that vaccine becomes available? How are we going to continue to get that distributed amongst the employees?
So, and you are correct, Councilman Smith. Up to this point, the only class of employees that have been that the vaccine has been made available to have been our paramedic EMTs. And of those paramedic EMTs, approximately 50% chose to get the vaccine or were able to get the vaccine either due to a scheduling conflict that they could not be there on that date and time because it was a very short window in which we received the vaccine, that the vaccine then had to be delivered before its expiration date came about. And we also had some employees who could not be available for the vaccine because they themselves were either isolating or quarantining. So about 50% of our staff, at least as of this morning, has had the vaccine in that particular class of people. Now, the people who could not make it due to scheduling have an opportunity to go directly, I believe, to Wood County Health Department and get a vaccine from them. And that's something that they are able to do, and they know that they are able to do that. In terms of the next groups of people that vaccine will be made available to, according to everything that we're seeing right now, it is citizens 65 years or older, it is teachers, and those are considered in phase 1B. I know that there's a group of both medical professionals as well as law enforcement that are lobbying the governor's office to put police officers into that next tier of groups that the vaccines are made available to. So as we know more, we'll then roll it out to those departments and divisions who have staff that fall into those categories.
Just a quick thought. Are we providing information about the vaccine itself to the individuals that are able to receive the vaccine?
Yes, I know that in, for instance, since our fire chief and our deputy fire chief were actually the individuals giving the inoculations to both our fire EMT staff as well as 4 other fire departments. There was information that the Wood County Health Department sent out to our staff to then distribute to everybody who was going to get a vaccine. So they have almost like MSDS data sheets.
Okay, because I, from what I've been reading from some of the governor reports, some of the concerns are that people are not, there's not a high percentage of people that necessarily want to get the vaccine that it's available to. I think specifically in nursing homes he was talking about today. And I believe part of that may be they're not getting information about what it is, how vaccines are made, and I just want to make sure that's getting made available to our.
That should have been distributed as part of the packet that we received from Wood County.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'd like to make 2 comments. One, I think is very short-sighted of the state government to not include law enforcement in the phase 1A. Their front line, they're out there with the fire and the police 9 times out of 10. Second of all, I'd like to commend the employees because every time I look over as the city employee, and it's really weird to see them all wearing face masks and the pickups, but they're doing a good job.
I will certainly let the staff know that. And one other item, I think I reported earlier this morning or perhaps yesterday that we had 4 applications for the vacant city council seat. As of tonight, we have 5, and I'll be scanning and forwarding that to you either tonight or tomorrow morning.
And just a reminder for the rest of the council, those applications, I don't want to discourage anybody. If any of the council members receive an application, I believe that we should consider that as well. And if you do receive that, please distribute that to the other council members.
President Smith, Councilwoman Deborah Bourne. I have had some people ask me if they could write a letter as well to any of us. Can they do that?
Does anybody have any issues with that on council? I don't have an issue if someone wants to submit their name. My thought is even a resume would be sufficient enough.
Thank you.
Yeah, if the council wants to then have the administration just pass it out, make sure it gets distributed, that we're happy to help accommodate that. Okay.
I would assume someone at Corey Coleman, I would assume someone's compiling all these so that we have kind of a comprehensive list on the 15th. Is that being taken? I just want to make sure because I'm not reading them as they come in. I would like to read them all at once.
Yes, the goal will be once the morning of the 16th hits, that we will have them scanned, sent in to all of the council members with a cover list of what applications are included. So you'll just have one document you can look at.
Perfect. Thank you.
Finance Director, welcome back up to the dance.
Thanks. I have no report per se, but I think if it's all right, I'll jump ahead here to the Finance Committee. Because I talked to Councilman McCarthy and Bourne earlier this week. We were kind of hoping to not have a committee meeting this month because we don't have a chairman. But I have one piece of legislation that I guess needs to go through, and it's almost a housekeeping measure. It's to renew a contract with our preparer for our gap basis financial reports. So after presenting the 2 remaining councilmen with the proposal and I guess talking about it a little bit, we decided to forego the Finance Committee meeting, and the piece of legislation will just be brought to council at the next council meeting. So just want to make sure everybody's aware that's what we're doing, and that's as close as I'm going to have to report tonight.
Good, thank you. So if anyone has any questions, it'll be in the packet and there'll be a summary of it. And so if you
Just
have any
like
questions-
usual.
Right, so they can ask any questions they have at the meeting or prior to that. Okay, thank you very much, Dave. Law Director?
No report.
Thank you. President of Council?
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a few things to report on. The first one is for the Employment Review Committee that met just prior to this meeting for the 2 individuals that you have presented to us. They were Jessica Kemp and Christopher Patrick for the Citizens Park and Recreation Advisory Committee. We recommended 2-0 to approve those reappointments, and at this time, I would like to entertain a motion to approve those 2 candidates.
McCarthy moved.
Can I have a second?
I second.
Okay, so, discussion? Roll call?
Okay, Ms. Warren,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. McCurdy,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy? Yes. Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And then I have two other things here. The first is I received an email, this is for all the council members up here, as a reminder that our 2020 financial disclosure statements are going to be due here for the Ethics Commission. The deadline is May 17th, 2021, unless you are a candidate in any of the elections, you should receive some emails on that. So if you're a candidate for this year, it looks like it's October 4th or something like that, but I reach out to the Ethics Commission for verification. And as a reminder to anybody who is appointed to this opening position, they will have to also do a filing within 15 days after being sworn into to the office. So just a reminder out there, I don't know if that's something that we can remind anybody who's putting that in, or whoever gets that appointment, Dave, if you can give them that little nudge.
Heads up, yep.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, I know that a few of us received an email from Dave Kenzel regarding a concern with his sign. I know I talked with him today. I believe I recall this coming up in Planning and Zoning Committee a few years ago. And I know that at that time I thought it was resolved. I don't know if this is something that the committee might be willing to discuss with the administration at the committee level, or...
Yeah, this is Tim McCarthy. We can do that if you'd like, but this, I think, all is attributable to the revised code section 660.16. And I don't know if that falls more in the safety area, the service area, or the planning and zoning area. I mean,
This is Bridget Cabot, the city administrator. Councilman McCarthy, I think a couple planning and zoning committee meetings ago, we talked about signage in city right away that was not cities, not a governmental unit's signage. And I think we confirmed with the committee at that time that there was not a desire to amend that section of the code to allow anybody to place any signage in the city's right away. At all, because it was a question of who do you allow to put signage in, who do you exclude from that. So my recollection is the committee looked at just leaving the language as it is, but at the next planning and zoning committee, we can bring that section of the code back and have that discussion.
okay, that's fine. I didn't remember that we had talked about that.
It came up in the context of Maple Street.
Well, I recall this conversation years ago.
Have we seen Mr. Kinzel's?
It came in yesterday, and it's something that Kate and I have not had an opportunity to review, along with Brody Walters and Planning and Zoning. And we will prepare a response.
This is Jan Attorney. My biggest concern is liability issues when you put a sign in, especially like that, and whether or not conforms to national traffic manual,
Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices.
Thank you.
Sure, easily said.
Because if it doesn't, then not only will he have liability, but the city will too. As case law, I know one huge case in Sutherland County that cost over that $3 million. So.
Well, we
We will bring that section of the code back to planning and zoning for additional discussion.
One of the questions I'll ask real quick on this is just to the administration, is there any thought given of, with the entrance into River Place and this is Councilman Smith, for the two entrances there, putting a sign in there or working with them to put a sign that states no trucks can go into those drives?
He does, I believe, have those internal to the property, if I'm not mistaken.
Would the city be?
But again, it goes back to the city's current code says that any non-governmental sign is not permitted in the city's right of way.
A truck cannot enter sign, would the city be opposed to putting one of those into?
I would have to take a look at the current layout and the signage along State Route 25.
some traffic, so if you were turning in to your big truck, would you be better to go in and find out you can't stay, you shouldn't have ever made it? Or would you be better to stop right in the middle of the road while you're making it?
To know that you can't go in there.
So that'll be something we can certainly talk about.
Okay.
This is Jim Attorney, that's the biggest issue. Once they turn in, they can't get back out. I think that, you know, I don't even think they're going to let them turn around.
There's not much room in that, and that can cause all kinds of other traffic issues.
Right.
So if there's a way that we can help alleviate that before they get there, that would be.
I think,
agree, totally.
if I'm not mistaken, and this is Bridget Cabot, the city administrator, and I'd have to maybe defer to Kate's memory on this a little bit, but I think the sign in question is to keep vehicular traffic out of a drive apron. That's the first drive apron going south on State Route 25, where trucks go in to load and unload. That's the sign, I believe, that's in question. He does not want vehicular traffic going back there because that's where the truck traffic is supposed to be.
So I thought the sign in question is the service entrance sign that's on the right of way.
Correct.
And I'm asking, if that's the issue, if there's a way that we can put signage that you can't turn into the actual parking lot itself, it could help alleviate that.
But I don't think the truck traffic is what is in question. My understanding is Mr. Kinsler is concerned that a passenger car is going into the service entrance where the trucks
That's not the
go.
conversation I had with him today.
Yeah, that's
It was more about the truck traffic going in the wrong areas.
That is not the
That's not the
signage.
conversation he has had with us.
Well, why don't we?
We will relook at that email and our past
Yeah.
communications with Mr. Kinsel.
That's what he told me too, this Jim Attorney, about the trucks, was his concern.
Yeah, that's,
We will produce the documentation that we've provided to him and that we've received from him.
but it's certainly something we can talk about at the committee and
Yes.
sort of there. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, or Council President Smith, why couldn't we just have Mr. Kinsel come to council and discuss it with all of us?
Well, it would probably be deferred. He's more than welcome to come and raise the issue today. He's raised it through council. We would probably, if we were to listen today, we're not going to take any action, and the result would be, I would think, Mr. McCarthy, that would be sent to the Planning and Zoning Committee. So Mr. Kinsel will be knowledgeable in having communication with council and with administration. I think set that in motion without having to appear. It's essentially has accomplished the result that would have been happened. So I think that this is probably a more effective way for him and for us, so that everybody's able to come to the committee fully knowledgeable about all the facts.
I just think he should have that available to him if needed.
He's more than welcome to come to council and speak. Mr. Kinsel has in the past come to council and spoken.
Yes.
So that certainly, we certainly would not preclude anybody from coming to
Thank you.
council.
So, and that appears to be the end of my report.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, did finance, safety.
Oh, okay. There is no, I have no report, we have no legislation. Our next meeting is Wednesday, January 27th at 5:30 p.m.
Thank you. Recreation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do not have any legislation or a report, but I will tell you that we are going to be meeting next Tuesday on January 12th at 6:30.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Planning and zoning.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, we're confused.
Oh, I had it wrong.
It was the safety committee
Is it,
report.
don't we start with service?
Service, yeah.
It's not on the agenda.
It's on his agenda because I accidentally left it off of all of yours.
That was my question.
No, safety is the first one I have.
Yeah,
Anyway, all right, so we'll just move. We're more than, service, what would you like to?
No, Mr. Attorney already spoke regarding service.
All right, so safety.
I'll comment about, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to bring the committee back later, but we have not met, so there is no report. Our next meeting is January 26th at 6 p.m.
Thank you. Sorry about that. All right. Planning and zoning?
No report, Your Honor. We meet on January 13th at 5:30 p.m.
Personnel?
No report, but I do have a piece of legislation. So at this time, I'd like to introduce ordinance 25-2020 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only. And I believe this is the third reading.
Roll call.
This is the third reading.
Okay, roll call. Ms. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Ms. Materne.
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Ordinance number 25, 2020. An ordinance amending the city's administrative code, Title 4, Chapter 20, by adding Rule 8 to subsection 220.05, creating a code of conduct for city council.
I move that ordinance 25, 2020 be passed.
I have discussion.
All right, hold on. So, moved and seconded by Mr. McCarthy. Discussion.
Yes, Councilwoman Moore, I have discussion. I have a statement on this that I'd like to make regarding ordinance 25, 2020. The ordinance turns this council into a court and creates a quasi-judicial action. In a quasi-judicial action, the accused councilperson must be granted due process rights and granted appeal rights under Ohio law, under Ohio Code Section 2506.01. To begin to say that this ordinance will not have a financial impact is inaccurate. A censure hearing, like any quasi-judicial action, will require a court reporter, which will cost money to make a record for the purpose of creating a transcript. The purpose of a transcript is to create a record that can then be appealed to the Court of Common Pleas, in which City Council will have to defend either, one, at the cost to the city, or two, cost to our insurer, which begs the question, will our insurance carrier even defend an appeal of a decision to censure? As this ordinance creates is a quasi-judicial hearing, this ordinance grants the accused councilperson due process rights. He or she must have the right to depose witnesses, subpoena evidence, and subpoena witnesses. Does council understand that and can of worms they are, opening with court reporters, hearing depositions, subpoenas, and appeals? Frankly, I think the ordinance violates the due process. One easy example is that it sets an arbitrary 3-minute time limit for the accused councilperson or their counsel to make their closing statement. That is an arbitrary time picked out of the sky, and by itself is probably enough cause for a court to throw this ordinance out. If a hearing takes a whole day, then it takes a whole day. In a quasi-judicial manner, council or any body cannot limit matters like closing statements to an arbitrary 3 minutes. Why not 5 minutes? Why not 9 and 15 seconds? The arbitrary hearing rules in this ordinance will not be upheld on either, one, the appeal of a decision to censure, or two, a challenge to the legal validity of this ordinance. The ordinance also is flawed in that it does not say when the evidence is to be exchanged, the day of the hearing, the week before, or is all that just a surprise evidence? And the ordinance even allows the accusing council member the right to vote on the decision. This is a blatant conflict of interest. One cannot make an accusation against the accused in a quasi-judicial matter, then make a case against the accused, and then vote against the accused. This is an unacceptable conflict of interest in a quasi-judicial action. The hearing body must be independent. If a council member wants to criticize a fellow council member, fine, they can do so at a council meeting on the record. If council wants to remove a council member, fine, there is a procedure in our code to do so. However, let's not enact an unnecessary and probably illegal ordinance that turns this council into a court. The lawyers on this podium should know this ordinance will not stand up to a judicial challenge. We will regret this ordinance if passed. I think it is unfortunate and unnecessary, and I will vote against it. Thank you.
Councilman Smith, question to our attorney, is this something that you see as a liability for the city?
No, I researched the standard for whether or not it is a quasi-judicial hearing, and with the way we have it laid out, no, I do not believe that it would be a liability for the city.
Can you explain why? Councilman Coleman.
Sorry, Law Director Sandretto. Thank you. Primarily because you are not, the consequences of the hearing are not that of a quasi-judicial matter. So there isn't the ability to put anybody in jail, there isn't the ability to fine anybody, there isn't the ability to remove the person from city council. This is simply for a censure, which means that because it is a procedural matter for city council, it is not quasi-judicial.
Are we I just want to be clear, is censorship common to have a procedure for in other legislative bodies?
Yes, very common.
Okay, are those considered quasi-judicial actions?
Only if they go beyond that, beyond censorship.
Okay.
And I'd like to add this to the attorney. The ordinance is written, it does provide for due process. I mean, due process can take all sorts of different forms, and its most basic element is notice and opportunity to be heard. This creates a hearing process. It doesn't have to require subpoena authority. It gives the complainant council member and the accused council member the opportunity to speak, call witnesses, have the witnesses testify. There's an opportunity for opening and closing statement. That's more than sufficient due process. And yeah, the complaining council member, but as can the accused council member. So I don't, to the notion that there's somehow deprivation of due process, I don't believe that's the case at all.
I just, since I'm one of the lawyers that was addressed that sits on this council, I took part in crafting this carefully with another attorney, Tim McCarthy. There's no better way for me to put this than it's just simply not a judicial action. There's no consequence other than the legislative authority to disapprove of what a member has done on council, which is what a censorship is. Like Kate said, there's no removal. This is designed so that people who are put in this position, one, that the accusing party takes it seriously, and two, that the accused has an outlet to tell their side of things or explain why their actions don't deserve censorship. It was not the intent of crafting this that it would ever be a judicial process or quasi-judicial. The only reason it lends itself is because we're trying to promote some sort of fairness as far as some sort of evidentiary proceeding. So I guess I will leave it at that.
To follow up with that, Councilman Coleman, there are other jurisdictions that do censorship simply by resolution. That a resolution is taken to City Council and City Council discusses the resolution and votes. I believe the committee felt, I apologize, when I presented this, that we wanted a more fair process to allow both sides to explain what happened in whatever scenario might take place, that this would be used. It was also, I believe, the great intent of the committee that we never have to use this, that this is there more as a last resort than ever a first resort.
I think that, and this is Councilman Cooling again, I think that it's very important to reiterate is this is an ordinance that as we were drafting, we hope that it doesn't cost the taxpayers any money because hopefully it's never used. This is an ordinance we hope stays dusty. So I will be supporting it and hopefully never any part of this process that was designed.
This is Councilman Smith. I just want to thank the Personnel Committee for taking this upon their shoulders to look through. I know I'd asked to have this as a conversation moving forward, and when I brought this up, thank you, Ms. Andretto, for also mentioning that this is something that I don't think any of us ever want to actually see the light of day have to be used. But to have the ability here is just the way to make certain that the only option that we have is either to do the resolution, as she has mentioned, or try to remove a council member. And I don't think that's anything that any council member up here would want to do anyways. And this is just the ability to help maintain decorum and to have an open and honest process. And so again, thank you to our personnel committees and one member who is unfortunately no longer a part of city council for working on this to get this through. And I know that it was recommended 3-0 for passage out of the committee.
Any other discussion? If not, roll call.
Okay, Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Bourne,
No.
Mr. McCarthy. Yeah. Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Mr. Coolman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith, did the council want to address the opening and the?
I was going to read that one.
Okay, and so that's the end of my personnel committee, I think. We have a meeting this Thursday at, I believe it's 5:30. And nothing further.
Very good, thank you. Public utilities.
Thank you, Your Honor. I do not have a report, but I do have a resolution here. So at this time, this is the resolution that we had tabled from last meeting. I would like to introduce Resolution 1/2021 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only and dispense with the second and third readings.
A second.
Roll call.
Okay, Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coolman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Resolution number 2021. A resolution authorizing a purchase agreement with Bergman Associates not to exceed $32,177 for the purchase of a Mission Communications telemetry system for the City of Perrysburg Department of Public Utilities, 11 sanitary sewer pump stations, and declaring an emergency.
That's not easy to read.
I move that Resolution 1/2021 be passed as an emergency measure.
I second.
Discussion?
Yes, I do have one quick question. I know that we had this tabled, that there was just some concerns in the actual proposal. I just want to make sure that those have been clarified, and if you can, was there something in particular with something that was quoted on there, or what was the?
So what happened was, the telemetry system itself is a Mission Controls telemetry system. And when I drafted the legislation originally, I drafted it as an agreement with Mission Controls. Not Mission Controls, Mission Communications. Sorry, Mission Communications. Then, when I went to look at it, I realized that the agreement is actually with Berggren, who provides the Mission Communications telemetry system, and the legislation needed to be that we were making this agreement with Berggren. Mission Communications is making a guarantee of a certain purchase, replacement hardware, and things like that, all of which you have in your paperwork. So it was a clerical error on my part that I wanted to make sure I fixed properly, so that we had the agreement with the correct company providing the thing, and the documentation from Mission Communications that they would stand by their promises as provider. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, that's what happened.
That's the only question I have, so thank you.
Any other questions? If not, roll call.
Okay, Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. Coolman,
Yes.
Ms. Bourne.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Our next scheduled public utility meeting will be on January 27th at 6:30 p.m. And I do have other business once we get to that.
I'll just let you carry on.
So one thing, and I forgot to bring this up in the President Council report, because we had talked about the appointments, but the Appointment Review Committee, we do have a vacancy on there. And that vacancy was when Ms. Matuzak has, unfortunate for us, resigned to take on a higher role. But with that, based off of how how our code reads, we have to have a Republican member of council take on that, and I would like to make the recommendation of Mr. Van Hoosen to fill in Jim Matuzak's seat.
Is that a motion, or does it need a motion?
That would be my motion.
Okay, second.
Any discussion or objection?
Yes, I think Mr. Van Duzen would be a good addition. Councilwoman Moore?
All right, roll call.
Okay, Ms. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes,
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Dusen.
Yes.
Thank you.
So that's all I have on this end, and then once we get the appointee, we can have the conversation of having the appointee who council selects to fill in the other roles for Mr. Matuzak.
Very good. Any other business to come before council?
I have just one question on that. So, just because you and I talked about this earlier, so we have an ordinance in our charter that we appoint a Republican and a Democrat on the appointment review committee, but our council itself in the charter is nonpartisan.
That is correct. It's not in the charter. This is Councilman Smith. It's actually a part of the council code. So the appointment review committee, and I'll read it off just so everyone understands. The committee is composed of the president of the council and 2 other council members, one of the latter from the Republican Party and the other from the Democratic Party. The latter 2 members shall be appointed by a majority vote of council. Not considered a major committee, its function is to review recommendation nominees to the city's appointed boards as well as vacancy which may occur in council. I believe I recall this as a conversation in the past that has been had, and apparently there was something that had occurred previously where it was more of a, so, and I'm not saying anything with the current administration. Do we know that there was an administration a long time ago, I don't know how long ago it was, but was making appointments that weren't necessary, that were for political favors more so than for the city.
Okay, I would like to look into change, whatever process we need to do to change that policy. I don't know where that goes through or who needs to review it, but that seems kind of ridiculous that we are a nonpartisan party that is part of our process is appointing people that are affiliated versus non-affiliated.
And I understand is that somebody want to, I get her.
My suggestion would be, Mr. Coleman, that you and I meet about how you would like to consider redrafting that, and then we'll see if we can figure out which committee we think that should go to.
Yeah, and this is council prerogative, and administration has there's no real say in it. I will just say, I've been on council a long time, and I think Tim will recall, it was set up that way to ensure that the appointments were nonpartisan and that partisanship, party affiliation doesn't matter for the most part, but it particularly didn't matter to the appointment of entities that are like parks and street and planning commission, where we did not want party affiliation or partisanship to be a controlling factor in the selection process. I think that that's how it came about. More than happy to have council review its own rules, but I think that also, the situation arose because it was very partisan and that was leading to certain things happening. And council wanted to just say, hey, these choices should be best qualified, nonpartisan, people who want to serve. I think is that fair, Jim?
Yeah, I get the result.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense to me. It's counterintuitive and almost hypocritical within its own policy.
Councilman Cool, this is Councilman Smith. I don't necessarily disagree with you because when I first sat down here, I thought the same thing, but I do understand the purpose of the council at the time that it passed this,
right.
That there was a problem before, and I think we've talked about this in numerous other situations where you have a problem with the prior administration, things have to change to make up for it, right?
No, I don't necessarily, and it's nothing against Barry or anybody else that's on that committee. That's just, it's one of those things you only find in government, I feel like. So, And then the other thing, I just wanted to make the administration aware that, are we putting out that trees are being picked up this week? I know it's on our website. Are we doing a social media post on that?
I will verify with our public information
so,
officer.
yes.
Okay, because I just want to, on our A to Z recycling page, which I went to find the answer, it says first full week of January, not January 11th, so we're doing it a week behind, just so that there's not confusion there.
We can clarify that.
Yep.
But that's a good opportunity if you direct people. Hope this Shannon's been doing a really good job on social media and making sure the information is out there, and I think that's been very helpful. So if you have any suggestions like that, or you know something that should be posted on social media, let us know. She's always looking for ideas or.
And I cannot speak highly enough of the new city webpage as far as I've used it. It's been great, so please pass that along.
Thank you. We will pass that on. Yes.
I have a comment I'd like to make.
Well, sure, go ahead.
Councilwoman Attorney. It's just a comment on an earlier question about the open position. Just writing an email or letter to saying you're interested is fine, but it kind of does a disservice to everybody who took the time to pull petitions and fill them out and send them in.
But that's something the council can certainly consider. But, yeah. Very good. Any other, with some trepidation, any other matters come before council?
I would like to say that, obviously, I think Mr. Eccles' services have been great for the city, and he will be missed, and I was happy to go to his send-off to us for their last week. And also, I wish we could have had something for Jeff Studer, the animal control officer. And I would like to see, if possible, if we could have that position opened up again for the animal control.
Do you want to respond? I mean, that's a recommendation from the police chief.
I can certainly relay that to Chief Jones, but he's done a lot of research on this topic. And the reality is that the last several years, our police officers are the ones who are responding to those calls because they're outside of the animal control officers' regular business hours. So that's something that we'll continue looking at and monitoring. We have a short-term partnership put together with Wood County. So we're going to take advantage of that and work through any issues. And if it turns out that it's not working out to our advantage and to our residents' advantage, we'll look at refilling that position.
I would just add that the administration has spent a significant amount of time reviewing that question, figure Chief Jones and how best to use his team and its available services and how they could best serve the community. So he did a yeoman's work in evaluating how best to proceed and made some recommendations regarding that. So, but we're happy to, if it isn't working, we will certainly look at it again.
Councilwoman Moore, just one more thing. I'd like to say if we could bring that position back, it would be good for the community. People really like the animal control officer in the personal touch that goes along with it. Thank you.
Councilman Coolman, and I will be very brief because I want to get out of here as well. If you could, you mentioned Pat's done, Chief Pat Jones has done significant research on that animal control. If he has memorialized that in an email of why that makes sense to.
Yeah, there's a whole.
Yes.
There was a whole memo distributed.
Yes, as part of
I might have missed it.
a weekly update, probably a month and a half ago.
Okay.
It was an attachment to that, but I'll resend it out to all the council.
That would be excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything else?
Jonathan Smith will make a motion to adjourn.
Hearing no objection, we are adjourned.